I can still remember the day we bought that picture frame. It was enormous, walnut wood, polished to a soft shine. 12 slots, one for each month of the year. We hung it in the hallway like a crown. Every season, every birthday, every family milestone, all displayed in neat, curated rows. Back then, it felt like we were building something. A legacy. A memory wall. A way to say, we lived, we loved, we were here. Every few months, I'd go through the photos on my phone. Pick out the best ones. Print them at the pharmacy around the corner. Then I'd carefully trim the edges. Slide them into place. And stand back to admire them. That was my ritual. I never missed a season. I'd call out to Mark, my husband, "New photos are up." And he'd glance, nod, maybe say, "Looks good." The kids never noticed. But I did. I always did. The photos told a story, our story. Or so I thought. Until one day, I stood in front of that frame, and realized something awful. I wasn't in it. Not once. Not in January, when we took that trip to the mountains. Not in June, when Lily graduated and we had a backyard party. Not in December, when we posed by the tree in matching sweaters. I was behind the camera. Behind the scenes. Behind everyone. And that broke something in me. At first, I laughed. A dry, bitter little sound. Surely I was somewhere. Maybe I forgot one. Maybe the last print batch just didn't include me. So I checked the drawer. The folders. The cloud. Thousands of photos. Vacations. Birthdays. First days of school. Last days of summer. Mark with the kids. The kids with each other. Mark and the dog. The dog and the kids. Even the damn birthday cake got more attention than I did. But me? A few blurry reflections. An arm reaching across the table. A shadow holding a sparkler in the corner of a beach shot. That was all. And suddenly, I couldn't breathe. I wasn't part of the story. Not the visible part. I was the one holding the camera. Cooking the meals. Folding the costumes. Cheering from the sidelines. And somehow, along the way, I disappeared. It wasn't anyone's fault. Not really. It wasn't malicious. Just easy. I was always available. Always behind the curtain. Always making sure the spotlight hit the others just right. And when it came time to document life, to remember, I had made myself forgettable. That night, I brought it up to Mark. "Have you ever noticed I'm not in any of the photos?" He was half asleep. Didn't even open his eyes. "What do you mean?" he mumbled. "I mean, I'm never in them. The family pictures, the ones on the wall." He grunted. "You take most of them, don't you?" I waited. Waited for him to say more. To sit up. To ask. But he rolled over. And just like that, the conversation was over. I sat on the edge of the bed for a long time. Listening to his breathing. To the sound of a house that had swallowed me whole. The next morning, I made breakfast like always. Waffles, bacon, strawberries cut into heart shapes. The kids laughed. Mark scrolled on his phone. No one asked how I slept. No one noticed the red in my eyes. I smiled anyway. Because that's what I did. Smile. Serve. Disappear. But something had shifted. That afternoon, I stood in front of the wall again. Looked at every photo. Every smile. Every moment I had built with my bare hands. And I whispered to myself, This is not proof that I lived. This is proof that I gave everything, and left nothing for myself. You don't vanish all at once. You fade. A little at a time. You give up the hot shower so someone else can use it first. You eat the corner piece of cake so the kids get the middle. You trade your favorite show for cartoons. You switch your birthday dinner for a night of homework help. You say, "It's fine. It's nothing. I don't mind." Until you forget what you do mind. Until you forget what you ever liked in the first place. People think disappearance is sudden, dramatic, like a slammed door or a packed suitcase. But mine was quiet, polite. It began with small things. I stopped buying clothes for myself. Stopped doing my nails. Stopped putting on lipstick unless we had guests. Mark used to notice when I wore red. Dangerous color, he'd say with a wink. But over the years, I became beige. Comfortable, neutral. Like wallpaper. Even my voice got softer. Like I didn't want to disturb the space I lived in. I started talking less at dinner. The kids would interrupt. Mark would answer for me. After a while, I stopped trying. No one noticed. One day, Lily asked me if I ever had a job. She was 10. And in that moment, I realized, she didn't know who I was before I was her mother. Of course I did, I said. But she didn't ask more. She turned back to her tablet. And that part of the conversation ended like a dropped call. I wanted to tell her, I worked at a gallery once. I used to paint. I knew how to stretch canvas and mix oils. There's a self-portrait in the attic, half finished. But I didn't say any of that. Because I wasn't sure she'd care. And that hurt more than the forgetting. Mark knew. We met in that gallery. I had paint on my hands when we shook. But I hadn't touched a brush in 12 years. He never asked why. I tried to write once. A journal. I opened a fresh notebook. Wrote the date on the first page. Held the pen, and froze. What would I write? What did I even think about anymore? Groceries. Soccer practice. Parent-teacher meetings. Whether Mark would notice if the laundry wasn't folded tonight. I closed the notebook. Put it in the back of the drawer. Never opened it again. I became efficient. Reliable. Predictable. Dinner at 6. Clean floors. Pressed collars. The kind of woman who remembers everyone's dentist appointment, but forgets her own birthday. And they loved me for it. They didn't say it, of course. But their comfort, their peace, that was built on my silence. I was the oil that made the machine run. But oil doesn't get framed on the wall. Oil doesn't get thanked. It just gets replaced when it runs out. And I was running out. The last photo of me in our house is from 2012. I'm holding Tommy, our youngest, at a pumpkin patch. I remember that day. He had a cold. The wind was brutal. Mark wanted just one picture. So I stepped in, wiped Tommy's nose, and smiled. I looked tired. Not in a cute way. In a drained way. Like someone who hasn't slept through the night in years. But I smiled. Because that's what mothers do. Right? We smile through the unraveling. We pose with our exhaustion like it's part of the costume. After that, I stayed behind the camera. I told myself I preferred it. That I didn't like how I looked in photos. That it was better this way. But that was a lie. I stopped existing on film, because I stopped existing in their eyes. And somewhere deep down, I agreed. I told Mark once that I felt invisible. It was late. The kids were asleep. We were watching TV. Or, Rather, he was. I was folding laundry on the couch beside him. I feel like I'm disappearing, I said. He looked at me, confused. Then said, "Don't be silly," and reached for the remote. That was it. And maybe I was silly. Silly to expect someone to notice a vanishing act, when you've made it look so seamless. Sometimes I wonder what they'll say when I'm gone. Not dead, just gone. Will they say I was generous? Loyal? Quiet? Will they remember how I made holiday meals from scratch? Decorated birthday cakes with tiny animals? Stitched name tags into every backpack? Or will they only remember the parts that were convenient for them? The parts that didn't complain, didn't crack, didn't need. What happens to women like me? The ones who gave everything, until there was nothing left to give? Are we remembered? Are we honored? Or do we just fade? One morning, I poured my coffee and just stood there. Didn't drink it. Didn't move. Just stared out the window, mug in hand, watching the neighbor's laundry sway on the line. And I thought, if I disappeared today, how long would it take for them to notice? A day? 2? Would they check my room? Would anyone think to call? Or would they assume I was at the store? At Lily's school? At a doctor's appointment no one remembered scheduling? And I hated myself for thinking that. Because it sounded like self-pity. Like one of those things lonely women mutter in old movies. But it didn't feel like drama. It felt like math. One person plus total silence equals nothing changes. I sat down at the table. The sun hit the floor just right. Warm, soft. But I felt cold. I opened my planner. The same one I used every year. Each day filled with other people's lives. Pick up dry cleaning. Lily's recital. Tommy dentist. Mark's shirts, tailor. Not one entry for me. Not one single thing that said, "You matter too." I closed it. Slid it across the table like it belonged to someone else. Later that day, I went into the attic. I don't know why. Maybe to look for something that reminded me of who I used to be. The attic was dusty, dim. Smelled like paper and mothballs and time. I opened a few old boxes. One was labeled **, college. Inside, a photo album. Some journals. A paintbrush wrapped in tissue. I touched the bristles. Still soft. Still familiar. There was a photo of me, taken by a friend, sitting on the floor in front of a canvas. Paint on my cheeks. Laughing. Alive. I stared at that version of myself for a long time. She looked so present. So unaware of what was coming. A life that would praise her for her support, but never ask how she was doing. A life that would thank her for the dinner, but not remember she hadn't sat down to eat. I wanted to speak to that girl in the picture. Tell her, hold on to yourself. Don't disappear. Don't let love become a full-time job with no benefits, **. But she couldn't hear me. And I wasn't her anymore. That night, I sat in bed and didn't turn on the TV. Didn't fold laundry. Didn't scroll. Just sat. Mark came in, phone in hand. Paused. "What's wrong?" he asked. And I almost said it. Almost spilled it all. The photo wall. The planner. The attic. But I just said, "I'm tired." He nodded, distracted. Long day? And I wanted to laugh. Wanted to scream. Every day was long. But instead, I said, "I think I'd like to take a day off." He looked confused. Off from what? And that nearly broke me. The next day, I left the house for no reason. No groceries. No errands. Just me. I walked to the park. Sat on a bench. Watched strangers walk their dogs, drink coffee, hold hands. No one knew me. No one asked me to do anything. And that anonymity, it was a relief. I took out an old receipt from my pocket and wrote on the back, "What do I like?" Not, "What do they need?" Not, "What should I do?" Just that one question. I sat with it for an hour. Didn't write anything else. But I carried that receipt in my coat for weeks. Sometimes Lily would come into the kitchen while I was cooking and start talking, not to me, but around me. She needed glue. She couldn't find her math book. Dad said he'd take her to the store but forgot. I'd nod. Offer help. Fix it. One day I didn't. She asked about her book. I said, "I'm sure you'll find it." She looked at me like I was speaking another language. Then left. And something in me stood taller. I found my journal again. The one I had hidden. Opened it. And this time, I wrote, "Today, I let someone solve their own problem. And the world didn't end." That night, I smiled into my pillow. It felt like rebellion. Tiny. Silent. But mine. It started with a walk. Just 20 minutes. No phone. No errands. I didn't tell anyone I was going. Didn't leave a note. Didn't ask permission. And when I came back, nothing had changed. No one noticed I was gone. No one said, "Where were you?" No one needed me for anything. And for once, that felt like a gift. The house was exactly as I'd left it. And that simple fact, that the world kept spinning without me holding it up, made me breathe easier than I had in years. I found an old recipe book in the back of the pantry. It had notes in the margins. From my mother. And from me, when I first became a wife. Little things like, "Too dry. Try olive oil instead," and, "Mark likes this one extra spicy." I used to love cooking. Before it became a duty. Before it became a daily test I never got thanked for passing. That night, I picked a recipe I liked. Not the kids. Not Mark. Me. Lentil soup with lemon. They all hated it. I made it anyway. And when dinner came, I served it without apology. Tommy wrinkled his nose. Mark raised an eyebrow. Lily asked if there was anything else. I said, "Nope." And that was that. I ate in peace. Later, in the bathroom, I found my old lipstick. Deep plum. Buried behind cotton swabs and expired face cream. I stared at it for a long time. Then I put it on. Not for anyone. Just to see what I looked like with color. I didn't look younger. Didn't look glamorous. But I looked awake. Like someone who hadn't given up yet. I smiled at myself. Not for a photo. Not for approval. Just because. I began writing again. At night. When the house was quiet. Not a diary. Not even full sentences at first. Just words. Little fragments. Enough. Elsewhere. Still here. Me. And those words became a map. A trail back to something I thought I'd lost forever. One afternoon, I walked past a small art store. The kind with hand-painted signs and dusty windows. There was a poster in the window, "Beginner's Watercolor Workshop, no experience needed." And I stood there, staring at it, feeling something stir in me that I hadn't felt in years. Want. Not responsibility. Not obligation. Just pure want. I didn't sign up that day. I wasn't ready. Not yet. But I passed the store again the next day. And the day after that. And each time, the wanting grew louder. At home, I began saying, no. Not often. Not loudly. But enough to surprise them. No, I can't drive you today. I'm busy. No, I'm not cooking tonight. No, I don't feel like watching that show. They didn't like it. Mark got quiet. Lily sulked. Tommy asked if I was mad. I wasn't mad. I was becoming. One evening, I stood in front of the family photo wall again. Still full. Still colorful. Still missing me. I took one frame down. Just one. The Christmas photo from last year. The one with the tree, the sweaters, the smiles. The one I took. I opened the back. Slid the photo out. Stared at it for a long time. Then I flipped it over and wrote on the back. She was there. She made the dinner. She bought the sweaters. She cleaned up the wrapping paper. She took the picture. She made the moment. She just didn't ask to be remembered. And I placed it back in the frame, backwards. No one noticed. But I knew. And that was enough. I left the house with nothing but my bag and a name in my head. Art Leaf. That was the name of the little store with the watercolor sign. The one I passed 3 days in a row. The one I didn't dare enter. Until today. I didn't tell anyone I was going. Didn't ask if they needed anything. Didn't leave dinner in the slow cooker. I just walked out. And every step felt like a door creaking open in my chest. The sky was gray. My coat was too thin. But I walked like someone with a destination. Even if it scared me. The doorbell above the shop chimed softly as I entered. Inside, warmth. Scattered paintbrushes. Color. The faint smell of paper and eucalyptus tea. A woman with silver-streaked curls looked up from behind the counter. "First time here?" she asked. I nodded. She smiled, a kind smile, not the kind that says, "You're in the wrong place." She didn't ask what I was looking for. She simply said, "Feel free to explore." And I did. I touched sketchbooks with textured covers. Ran my fingers over colored pencils arranged like quiet rainbows. Found a shelf labeled, "Beginner Sets." And I stood there, heart pounding. Because I wasn't just buying brushes.